So that should be share the screen. All right, so we are now recording. You also have the DNS lab homework due tonight, right? That's due. Okay, great. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the module. So we were in, and also the account management, right? This one's also due today.
The Wireshark account management.
Those are due tonight.
Yeah. The DNS.
Oh, that was already done. Yeah. Okay, great. That's how it is. Great, great. All right. So yeah, so we are currently on firewalls. And let's go to the Word document. I think we've done some of these already. Let's get situated. Right. So we did these examples, blocking basically a port 22 SSH was the service that we went over some of the syntax for that. We're using 2 VMs basically. So we did that. We also looked at root, right, and how we can turn it on or off. We also went over ICMP packets. So how can a machine block ICMP traffic? For that one, we actually went into the files, the configuration of UFW, and you guys saw a little bit of the syntax of the IP tables firewall, the actual Linux file, okay? Just pretty powerful, very powerful, in fact. So we went over that. I think we've completed that one. Then we did blocking by IP address. So I've gone over that example. We haven't done the Netcat one. So this is actually the scenario that I was talking about. So I will create a scenario. I'll demo it, and then I'll give you like a rule that you have to implement. It's basically like I'll do something, and then you have to think, okay, now how do I implement firewall rules to block this type of traffic? I will give you some additional commands for UFW, but in a more generic way. I'm not going to solve this one. All right, so as far as the firewall. All right, so I'll go over most of these bullets here from 1 all the way to 49, but without the rule. And actually, it's 2 exercises, now that I remember. Okay, and then we kind of looked at this a little bit, right? Writing some scripts. So I'll generate some problems here, but right now we're going to go over this one, okay? So follow along. We're going to install a tool called NC Netcat, and netcat.traditional basically. And it's basically a very powerful tool, very versatile, and we're going to use it to create tunnels. So you guys can do SSH already. That's a secure tunnel. Telnet is an insecure tunnel, and Netcat allows you to create tunnels between 2 machines. Okay, so obviously this is playing with port numbers, etc. So we're going to go through that exercise. So I'll go over the on the whiteboard, the diagram for this one, kind of lay it out, discuss it, and then we're going to implement it on the 2 virtual machines, basically. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'm going to share the whiteboard. Okay. All right, so this is the scenario. You're going to have 2 machines. Okay, so we got 2 VMs. All right, as you have, so seed and seed, seed 1, seed 2, for instance, your 2 machines, seed 1, seed 2. As usual, because these are kind of like networking things now, make sure that you get an IP address for each machine that is unique and that you can ping from one to the other, similar to the DNS. All right, so it's actually pretty straightforward. So if you know how to use Netcat, you probably understand. The idea is we're going to build a tunnel. Right now, remember, this is an insecure tunnel. It's not encrypted. Later in the semester, at some point, we'll probably come back to Netcat, and I'll show you guys, something about encryption. But basically, it's just this idea. Okay, remember that there's no actual tunnel across the internet. Basically, what's going to happen is you have your packet going out, and then now you have like this idea of the tunnel, and so that's going to add like a header, right? And so that gives you the information that will allow it to go to the proper destination. When it gets to that machine, right, the machine will just like remove that header and let it continue as a normal packet. All right, so that's basically what we're gonna implement in a very straightforward way. So the scenario is going to be something very simple. I'm going to put a file. So I'm going to put a file called bar. Okay, let me redo that. Put a file in one system. Okay. So one file in one system is going to be on the desktop, bar.txt, and I'm going to write some sentence in there. Okay. And then I'm going to put another file in the other system. Okay. And I'm going to leave that one blank. So basically then I'm going to create a connection using Netcat, right? Between a port number, right? Port numbers, basically between the two systems. And then I'm going to issue a command so that the contents of bar go through the tunnel across the internet, right, to the other file. So basically, if I write cat here, once I implement this, cat will appear on the other machine. Does that make sense? And we can do this. We can also do actually the bin bash. You know, our bash shell could also be attached to this so that we can actually run commands from one system to the other. Do you guys see that? So like this would be like a remote terminal. So for instance, I have here bash, right? You know, where I type my ls and so on. I can tie this to the tunnel, and therefore I can actually just type the commands here and execute them on the other machine. But why does this work? Because we're going to turn off the firewall, right? So there's not going to be any blocking, or we're going to open up the ports for this to happen. Does that make sense? So that's really our scenario. It's actually two problems, right? One, the first one is just a text file. So it's going to be like problem one. I still need to write, no, I think it's already written there. So problem one, I'll read through the document again, but I'm pretty sure those are there. So problem one and problem two. So this one is just going to be the text file. And then the other one is going to be the bin bash, right? So actually, so we can manipulate the shell, but remotely. Okay. So I'll do this with you guys. Just implement all of this. Firewalls off, right? And just show you how everything should work. Then you guys, what do you need to do? You need to go in there and turn on the firewalls, right? And write the appropriate rules so that you can block this traffic and then so that you can allow it through the firewall. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So that's basically the idea. And remember, as always, you need to show, okay, this is how it looks, right, when it works. And then after I've implemented my rules, which are these, this is, you know, what I get. The rules, I will give these to you, okay, just in a generic form, so not the actual values. So I've already given you certain rules for UFW, right? We did that on Tuesday, and today I'm just going to add a little bit more to that. But this is the scenario, those two problems. Okay, so just to give you a reminder, right? So we're talking about UFW. We're still going to continue to use UFW. And the basic idea was we do things like deny, allow, delete. Okay, so these are the basic parameters that we define in the firewall. Okay, so UFW and the command. Okay, so we have seen, for instance, just to give you really quickly, UFW deny from an IP, right? So we're going to say UFW deny from IP, right? So this was the last one that we covered on Tuesday. Okay. So now I will give you the command. So a new syntax for this, more of a generic approach, is you can do things like this. You can do sudo, right? So remember sudo UFW, and then you can say deny I'll make sure I do this right. Yeah. So UFW deny out to IP, for instance, and then you can specify port, something like 22. Do you see that? So this is additional syntax that you can use to define basically your commands. All right. So obviously this one is one single command. We hadn't done once. We did this in two commands, right? On Tuesday, but that meant one or the other. It didn't really mean both at the same time. So this is a little bit different now because you're specifying both the IP and also the port number. Okay, so that, I kind of saved for today, and because it's a little bit more related to the problems that we're doing a little bit there. So you have to implement these successfully, okay? All right, so that's basically the syntax. I just want to confirm. Now, oh yeah, there's the other one. So you may also look, I'm also going to give you another approach. So I'm going to write it over here. You can also try this is just another generic example. It doesn't necessarily relate to one of the problems, but you can use it to formulate your solution. So sudo UFW, allow, and then you can say protocol, and in this case, TCP. There are other protocols, right? UDP, TMP, right? So gives you a little bit more flexibility to play with things. And this continues down here. So then from, and then you can say IP, and you can say things such as to port 22 or to any port. All right, so you can see it's very flexible. IP tables is not like this. It's a little bit more systematic, right? This is closer to natural language because it's the uncomplicated firewall. Okay. So how would you interpret this command? Basically, this firewall rule. Allow access to any TCP on that IP address, right? So allow access, it says from, all right, so allow access from that IP to port 22 or any port, basically, okay? All right, so hopefully these are additional like syntax that you can use in a formulation of your commands. Now we're going to go over Netcat and kind of implement the problems, basically. So we're going to define the problems here. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the virtual machines. Click on this. Share the screen. All right, so let's start the two VMs. Start the two VMs. I already installed this because I was trying this out in my office. So you guys won't have these installed. You're going to have to install them first. So probably while I'm loading, just do sudo apt update, kind of update the repos. And then while it's doing that, we can go ahead, then we can install Netcat. Okay, so close that one. Close this one. Okay, so let's log in. All right, so I already gave you the scenario. We have to use Netcat on both ends, kind of make the connections basically. When you initialize Netcat, it'll kind of like take the terminal over, and so just leave the terminal running. And if you need another terminal, just open another one. Okay. All right, so first of all, let's take a look at the VMs just to make sure we have everything. So I'm gonna do here ifconfig. Okay, so that's 10.0.2.4. So this is probably where I'm going to receive the data. Okay, so 10.0.2.4. Then I'm going to go to the other machine and open a terminal. I'm going to do ifconfig. All right, 10.0.2.15. So I have both of them. I'm just going to ping from one. So 10.0.2.4. Right, and I can reach it. So that's basically what you want to do. Now from this machine, this is where I'm going to set up a file. So I'm just going to say bar2 because I already built bar. Let's do nano bar2.txt, not bart.txt, and just put some information in here. Whatever you want to put in here, you can say, car, cat, dog, right? Something like that. Save that information, right? So remember, this information is going to go through Netcat, which means it's going to generate packet traffic, right? And so your goal is going to be to block this on the firewall. So if we do cat here, bar2 txt, you can see car, cat, dog. There we go. All right. So now the command is nc.traditional. Traditional. Right. So if I run this one, I get this command line. If you guys run this, you probably get something like apt-get install netcat traditional. So I believe the command, so kill that, should be, I probably have it here. There, right? So that's the suggestion that you get in Linux, to do sudo apt install netcat dash traditional. So just go ahead and hit enter there and let it install. Okay. And you need to do that on the other machine as well. So we're going to go to the other machine. All right, 10.0.2.4. So you do nc.traditional. And there you can see I've already installed it. Remember, there's two problems for this. So the file problem is the first one we're doing. Okay. So if you don't have it, go ahead and do also sudo apt install here. Yeah, sudo apt install netcat traditional. Let me know when it finishes installing so that I can proceed. Okay. Any questions? Just let me know when you guys are done. You're done? All right, great. All right, so if you're done, then let's kind of just go over a little bit of the syntax of this. So basically you would be done here, right? So do clear. So we want to, Netcat is, as I said, it establishes a tunnel. So the whole idea is it's going to open a port on the system. Remember that ports are really important. They're related to firewalls, right? So firewall is literally that your computer has a wall, and then now you're punching a hole through it, right? And so, and you're opening a port number that you want. So the basic syntax is going to be like this. So from one machine, I think in the notes that I have, I use the name seed and 1204. Whatever I use, just use it as one machine or the other, and then know we're going to do all of this by IP. So let's say you want to establish a simple connection. Then you can type something like nc.traditional, and then -L, which stands for listen, and then -P, which stands for port. And then you just specify whatever port you want. Obviously, don't use like the 22 or something like that. Use ports above 1000. Questions? Okay, so for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see that? So that's basically the idea. You're going to establish this, okay? So this machine now, it's 10024, and you're punching or opening port 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatever comes in there, it's going to be redirected to somewhere, right? So in this case, if this was a router, this is actually like a similar concept to port forwarding, right? But we are not doing port forwarding on a network because this is not a router. Instead, we're doing kind of a port forwarding inside the system itself on a local host, okay? But it's a similar idea. Port forwarding can be done in IP tables, and there's actually the syntax or the command is in the notes. But anyway, we're just doing this at the local host level. All right. So if you want to establish a connection between one and the other, one has to listen, and then from the other, you just make a connection. That would be very similar to how you make a connection with SSH, actually. So let's say that let's just try things out. So I'm gonna do nc traditional -L -P1234. All right, so if you can see there, I hit the command and now it's just hanging there. So that basically tells you that it's listening, all right? It's listening on that port for information. And then as you guys already know about redirection, we can take advantage of that. Redirection, pipes, and all of that to process data. So you can make this as elaborate as possible. But because we're just doing firewalls today, we really just care about the scenario, okay? All right, so I've established this one. Now I'm going to go to the other machine and just kind of make a connection. So then here, if you remember, this is 10.02.15. So I want to connect to 10.0.2.4. So then to do that, you can just try nc.traditional, nc.traditional dash, and then the name of the IP, so 10.0.2.4. And then the port number, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see that? So this one is similar to SSH. And as you can see now, both of them are connected, basically. All right, but we haven't really established that we're going to be doing anything. But I'm just going to say, just type something. Right, so that basically there's a tunnel built between the two. So. Okay, so this should be this one, right? So then I go over here. Okay. So what did I build there? Just a very simple chat, right? So I built a chat. It's an insecure chat. Now you could do this. I mean, there's no reason why this wouldn't work around the internet, etc. But keep in mind, you're not doing encryption, right? But anyway, so we built a tunnel and we can basically send text. You can also then tie this to a file so that you can just dump information. You could copy the entire hard drive, for instance, zip it, and send it through the tunnel to another machine and, save it. But we're just going to send a very small file. And then we're going to do the one where it's actually like controlling the command line of the system, okay? So basically this shows you how to do a Netcat, and then of course, your goal is to implement firewall rules, one rule that will stop this traffic. So you have to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Once again, I do recommend that you use Wireshark, right? So Wireshark might be a good tool for you to start up and look at the packets. So it gives you some insights of how to create this rule. Make sense? All right, so now let's go to the exercise. So I'm going to kill this tunnel. Sometimes when you're using these tunnels, the port becomes like locked. If for whatever reason that happens, just change it to another port, 1, 2, 3, 5, and that should work. So when you reset the machine, it should be free again. Okay, so let's go to the other one. Also, kill that one. All right, so now the scenario is going to be that we are going to want to have a file here on 10.0.24. So I'm going to do ifconfig 10.0.24. I already have the file foo, right? You can see it down there. So I'm going to create foo2, but I think in your notes it probably says foo. So I'm going to now run that command. So this is going to be the receiving end, and I'm going to send the contents of a file from the other machine. So for that, I'm going to run nc.traditional -l-p 1, 2, 3, 4, the port, and then I'm going to use redirection, right? So this basically means that whatever comes in through the tunnel now, instead of being showed on the terminal, is going to be sent to a file, all right? So in this case, the file is going to be foo2.txt. It's just going to be an empty file right now. Okay. So should be working. All right. So we need to create that file, of course. Now I'm going to go to the other machine. Here. All right. I'm going to create a file called bar2. Oh, I had already created bar2. Oh, you know what error I'm making? I should have gone to here. I need to go to desktop. Sorry about that. Forgot. All right, desktop. There we go. That's why I wasn't seeing the files. So I must have created bar. Yeah, I created it somewhere else. All right, so let's just create bar here. So I'm going to do nano bar2. Let's see, bar2.txt in the desktop. And I'm just going to say car, blue, cat, yellow. Okay. Control X, Y, enter. All right, there it is. Bar2 is created. Now let's go to the other VM. Kill this one because it created the file, but not on the desktop, and I want to see it. So I'm going to do ls cd into desktop. Hit clear here. ifconfig 10.0.24 clear. So now I can run the command. Yeah. So nc traditional -l-p 1, 2, 3, 4 foo2. There it is. So foo2 is there, but it's currently empty, right? And it's going to receive the contents of the other one. So I'm going to go ahead now here, right? And I'm going to initiate the command to send the information. So this should be nc.traditional 10.0.2.4, port number 1234. and I'm going to read in, so I'm going to redirect in the contents of bar 2 dot txt. All right, so at this point, that should work. So now we need to check that the data was transferred, right? All of this, as I said, was transferred via IP addresses. So this is where you need to then show in your lab, okay, I did it, it worked, here's the screenshots. And then now you need to implement a firewall rule that blocks this, okay? And then also, how would you allow it through the firewall? So we want to check to see was the data transferred. So I'm going to go ahead and go here. Instead of killing this, I'll leave it open. I'm just going to open up another terminal. Okay. I'm going to hit ls, cd desktop. Here, ls. All right, so foo, so let's do ls-l. So foo2 has 20 bytes of contents. Let's go ahead and print it. Okay. And there you go, car blue, cat yellow. So you were able to transfer the data. And really, as I said, you can transfer even the whole hard drive, right? So it's basically like you can, like a forensics kind of thing, just grab the whole thing and send it through. There's a command for that. All right, so anyway, so you have seen how this works. So the question is, was the data transferred? Yes. Now you need to enable the firewall, right? Repeat the previous file transfer and see what happens. All right, so what's going to happen when you start blocking things? Okay, so let's take a look at that now. So I'm in here. Let's check again what machine I'm in. You have config 10024. Okay, so sudo UFW status inactive. So the firewall is inactive. I'm going to go to the other machine. I want to leave this tunnel open because I want to see with the tunnel. So I'm going to do sudo UFW status. And this one is active, but things are going out, right? So if you remember, the policy that we saw for UFW by default is things going out, outgoing are allowed, things coming in are rejected. Okay, so now we want to basically harden the machine, right? But have rules that would allow this basically. So that's really what we want to do. So you can do this from one or the other machine, just, you know, kind of play with this idea. Okay, so let's go to the other machine. Sudo UFW enable. Okay, sudo UFW status. Now this has a lot of rules in here. Deny. This is probably from another class that I did. So you guys don't have all these rules, right? So just flush them out, yeah. All right. So basically now, let's try. We need to figure out like the rules. Okay, so I'm gonna do clear here. I know the firewall is off. I'm gonna go over here, kill this one. Okay. But the firewall, let's see. No status, sorry. So it's active, okay. So I'm gonna go to the other machine. First, we need to block it, right? Stop it, and then we need to add a rule. So I'm gonna do that. And I'm going to I'm gonna do nano here, ls-l, nano bar3 dot txt. Now I'm going to say bird fly. Okay. Control X1. So now I'm going to do NC traditional 1002 1234 bar 3, correct? So I'm going to read the contents of bar 3 into the tunnel. Okay, sent it. Just to confirm, this is IF config 10.02.15. Now we need to go to 10.0.2.4. Tunnel is established. Sudo UFW status, sorry, status. Active /L. So it's writing to foo2. So I'm going to look at foo2. Cat foo2. There's nothing in it. Guys, you see that? There's nothing in it, right? Okay. So then that's the challenge, right? So I'm going to do, did I do everything right? Are you guys like following along? Yeah. So if I do, I look at this one, NC traditional, foo2 should have received something, I think. Cat, nothing. I'm going to maybe kill it and run it again, just in case. Okay. Established it again. I'm going to do cat foo2 ls-, sorry. ls-l foo2. I'm going to go back again to this one. Okay. I'm going to kill this one. I'm going to check out. There is a bar 3 with data. Cat bar 3. Bird fly. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the command. NC traditional 10.0.2.4 1234. I'm reading in bar 3. Just did it. Go back to 10.0.2.4 here. Still 0. The command is this one. Cat foo2. Nothing, right? All right, so now let's disable the firewall. So sudo UFW disable. Okay. ls-l foo2 cat foo2. Nothing. Let's run it from the other end again. Right, I'm going to read in bar 3 again, 10.0.2.4 1234. Hit that. I'm going to come back here. Do a clear. 9. Do you see that? So now it's writing into foo2 and it wrote bird fly. So the firewall blocks it, right? So you have to turn off the firewall and then turn on Netcat. Now the question is, how do you use the firewall to allow this through? Does that make sense? That's your problem for you to solve. Okay, so you got to think about it. This is kind of like port forwarding is, in a sense. If you think of your home router, would do the exact same thing. You'd send something, and it's just going to smash into it. But if you open that port and you forward to the IP of a computer inside your network, you've effectively forwarded something, and that's done through the IP tables. Command if you're using Linux as a router, I mean. Any questions on the problem? This problem. So let's go to the Word document. I believe it's pretty much the same, but maybe I wrote it in a little, I wrote some of these problems a while ago, so I may have been writing them and with different terminology. So let's take a look at this one. So the extremely versatile Netcat utility. Netcat has got to be one of the most versatile tools ever created for troubleshooting networks. It is frequently referred to as the Swiss Army knife for network diagnostics. We will use the tool to test another concept of the firewall, right? Which is what we're doing. In this setup, you will need two VMs. So I kind of referenced them as seed and 1204 here, but you get the idea. Get the host name and the seed machine. So actually, you don't have to use ARP, just use the IP. So I want to correct this part here. So you can, and wherever you see like a host name type of a thing, like seed desktop local, just replace that with the actual IP address as I demoed, and that should work fine. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. All right. So there's no confusion. We've installed it already, right, on both machines. Example 1, so this is the one I was doing. Establish a simple connection from seed to 1204. So on seed, which was 10.0.2.4, we were listening on port 134. Okay. On 1204, that's like the sender. We just basically make a connection from 10.0.2.15. We make a connection to, which is going to be 1204 in this example, to 10.0.2.4, right? On port 1234. So we're establishing a connection to that machine. If the connection is established, you should be able to type something on one machine and see it on the other one, like a basic chat. And that's what we just did. Then we kill the connections. So then we did example number 2. Now go to seed again, this 10.0.2.4 in my example. And we open the port, but we are writing to foo.txt. Then on the other machine, on the sender, right, we create a file, bar.txt, and add a message to it. When we make the connection, we then redirect the contents of bar, and then we checked it on foo. So was the data transferred? Yes. Now we enable the firewall on the receiving machine, right, 10.0.2.4. We just did that as a demo. Repeat the previous process. Does it work? Why? Okay. So you basically should see that it doesn't work as we demo. So to view, obviously, we did sudo UFW status, verbose, etc. If it did not work, so here's the question now that you guys have to implement. If it did not work, what rule could you add? If it did not work, what rule could you add? I guess to allow. I need to correct that, sorry. All right, so I will correct that. But yeah, if it did not work, what rule would you add to allow this transfer in? Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Remember, it's on the receiving machine is where we turned on the firewall, and that's where it blocked it. So now you're basically, if you get confused, think of it as a port forwarding, right? That's kind of what you're trying to do in a simpler local host variation of that. And I will update this bullet 32. Let's say allow. All right, so if it did not work, what rule could you add to allow this transfer? All right, and then that's the question mark. Then, these are just commands that you would run the transfer again. Does it work? Report your results, basically. Okay, so that's one of the problems. The other one is just it'll be very similar, but we're going to cover another example number 3 here. Okay. Any questions about that problem? All clear? All right, great. So now let's go ahead and do the other example, which is we're going to try to tie Netcat to the command line, right? So to the bash. So remember that I'll show you where this is coming from, but if you remember in your user accounts, you have this, right? So if we go to the machines, let's grab any machine. And I'll close these tunnels, actually. I'll reset them up again. So let me close the tunnels. Okay. So let's go to here. All right. So if we view, we've looked at this file many times this semester, but if we do etc pass wd, right, you can see that an account such as dummy2 or seed here will have the X for the password, the user ID. It's got the home folder. And then the last thing is this bin bash. So this is actually a program that gets tied to you whenever you log in, right? So whenever you log into your system, it's like you get bin bash. It runs, and that's the terminal, basically. So, and usually that bin bash is actually just a symbolic link to the actual program, such as dash, I believe, currently. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just try to tie our tunnel to this bash so that effectively we have a type of a remote control of the machine. Okay, so one of the goals of showing you this, it's nice and all to transfer some text, right? It's a nice thing to do. Even the whole file system, it's a whole other story to get bin bash, because now you take over the control of the machine and some network. You can launch attacks. You can just delete everything, delete all accounts, lock the machine, and also start attacking other machines. So that's kind of what this is showing. So in a sense, the idea, ports are dangerous, right? So you gotta watch out for those. All right, so you've seen it, you've seen bin bash. All right, so now let's go ahead and repeat the exercise, example 3, basically. We can read through it. Okay, so let's go to the Word document. So example 3 here, use Netcat to create a shell on a remote machine, basically. You can use another port such as 1, 2, 3, 5 in this case. And you can see that we could leave one port open and we can have the other port open. You can even create circular things going on for whatever reason. All right, so we have from seed and 1204. So on the 10024, we're going to listen on port 1235, but connect it this time to the shell of that machine. Okay. Then we're going to go to the other machine, which would be 10025, and we're going to invoke Netcat and on port 1235. And then after that, if everything works, then we should be able to run these commands, ls, w, etc., which are command line commands. Okay. Any questions? All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to go here. Looking at my notes. All right, so we're going to go to, let's do ifconfig. All right, okay, this is the other machine. So just to be consistent, I'm going to go to the other one. So this is 10024, that's the receiving machine. So this is the one that we're going to try to hijack in a sense. So I'm going to do nc traditional. -L-P 1235 in this case, just to kind of separate the problems. -E bin bash. Okay, So the terminal is running in the background, so that basically should indicate that it's running. Okay. Now we're going to go to the other machine. Here, right? So I'm going to do clear. And I'm going to now initiate the connection. So netcat traditional 10.0.2.4 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay. Yeah, right. So now I'm going to try to run a command. ls. You see that? What's another command? Format hard drive. All right, but so what else can we do? PWD. You see that, and we get that. You know, all kinds of commands. So this should show you that we basically we have a remote login or shell from one machine to the other. If you're a disgruntled employee or a sysadmin at some company, you can just punch a hole in the server, tie it to the command line, and you remotely can access that computer if you can get through the firewall. So remember, you're doing it at the host level. You'd still need to get through the actual firewall of the network, but then you could punch a hole through that as well. So as a sysadmin, you got a lot of power, right? This is dangerous, obviously, for obvious reasons. This is, in fact, whenever you're doing a hijacking attack of any kind, this is your objective, right? To get a terminal such as this one. Now, key question is, do you have the root privilege? Okay, so who am I? Who am I? Seed. So you do not have well, I mean, I guess you're seed, but you have to know the password, right, to become an administrator, and then you can do total damage. So here, the only thing that's protecting this system is the principle of least privilege, right? So if you get an account, you know, you're limited to the permissions of that account. Does that make sense, guys? We didn't log in as seed, if you think about it. Before, whenever you came in through SSH, you would type in C's, the password, you're in the system. Here, you did it from the inside, and it's like you opened the door from the inside, and you've got the permissions of the user. Now, the question is, what if you did root, for instance? Do you guys see what I'm saying? What would happen, right? You know how to enable root. So what does Linux do in that scenario? Is Linux smart enough to never let that be root on? But let's try it and we can try this in a quick way by using sudo, correct? So I'm going to go ahead and just keep in mind, you have to write a firewall. All right, but let me go. So this is ifconfig. ifconfig. Right, so we're in 10.0.2.5. So kind of curious, let's say we go over here, and I'm going to now, who am I? Who am I? I'm seed, okay. I know I'm a sudoer. ifconfig 10.0.2.4. I'm going to run the netcat command, but I'm going to type sudo in front of it. It lets me. Okay, so now let's go to the other system. I'm going to do clear here. ifconfig 10.0.2.15. I'm going to initiate here. It doesn't have anything to do with sudo, right? Because I'm coming from the other system. All right. So I've established a connection. Now I'm going to do ls. It works. Who am I? So this is the question, right? That's scary, right? So, yeah. Any questions? All right. So this demo's example 3. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remember, this is a Linux machine, very secure actually. So let's go to the Word document and kind of think about it, right? So example 3, use Netcat to create a shell on a remote machine. We've done that. We use port 1235, kind of demoed it. All right. So here you're gonna have to add, I guess I'll modify this one too. Add a rule. So here the rule would be, what rule? I guess just block for this scenario as well. So add a rule. Oh, actually, we need to turn on the firewall, right? That's actually what we need to do. So let's go to 10.0.2.4. 10.0.2.4. This is running. Now I'm going to turn on the firewall because the firewall was disabled, I believe. So sudo UFW status inactive, right? So it's off. So now I'm going to turn it on. Sudo UFW enable. Active. Now I'm going to start this one. Sudo NC traditional 1234 1235. It's running. Okay. Excuse me. I'm going to go to the other system. This is ifconfig. All right, 10.0.2.15, up arrow, NC traditional 10.0.2.4.1.2.3.5. Okay, now I've connected. What do you guys notice? The firewall is preventing it, right? Right? So the firewall prevents it, again, because the policy is nothing initiating from the outside in will be allowed through. So in this one, then add a rule to allow this, okay? Why would you ever do that? Let's say in a scenario, you're a disgruntled sysadmin, you're leaving the company, but you're going to leave a way in. So obviously, probably the company will have the firewall on. Do you guys see that? So you want to run this command so you can always take over that shell. But since if you turn off the firewall, the company would notice immediately, right? So you need to add a rule that allows it in. Does that make sense, guys? All right, and I'll add that text. Add a rule to allow in and see if you can get the root privilege, okay? That you have that who am I equal root or ID equals 0. Any questions on these two problems? Nope, making sense. All right, great. So yeah, I'll try to think of a few other problems that where the scenario is simple, but I think these are good enough to keep you to do some nice exercises on this. So let's go back to the Word document. So we completed this demo as well. I'll modify this document in a sec. And like I said, I'll think maybe of a few additional problems that aren't as involved in setting up that you can also solve, okay? Make sense? Any questions? All right. Let me just take a look at my notes here. All right, so we did the configuration of the firewall Python script. I'm not sure. All right, yeah, so that's basically the demo. Okay, so I'll assign the problems and you can work on them. So let me go ahead and I'll end this.